What's up YouTube? Shamu Aquatics here, bringing you guys another video. Today I'm going to talk about how my fish keeping hobby started. Now, I've heard a lot of other YouTubers share how they got into the hobby, the mistakes they made back when they didn't know any better, and all that stuff. Now, I've been keeping fish for 20 years, and I know that makes me sound old, but I'm not old. I've been doing this since I was 5 years old. So I'm 25 now. So my hobby got started because my grandparents are former fish keepers, and for decades before I was born, they had a bunch of fish tanks. But by the time I came around, they had already downsized to just one tank. It was a little 15-gallon tank with like some zebra danios and black skirt tetras and even a rainbow shark. Now, obviously, my grandparents didn't really know what they were doing, even though they kept fish for a long time, but they were doing it since like long before the internet got big and all that stuff. They were really never into the internet or any of that stuff. So yeah, they had a big ass rainbow shark in a little 15-gallon tank. I don't know how that thing lived so long, but it did, and it got huge. And I was just totally infatuated with this rainbow shark. Like, I just completely ignored all the other fish in that tank, and I just stared at that shark all the time. Because, you know, a little kid is thinking, ooh, a shark. But, yeah. I was in my grandparents' bedroom all the time staring at their tank. And finally, when I was like 5 years old, maybe 6, I don't know, my grandparents and my dad got me my own little 5-gallon tank. And my grandparents and my dad did not know any better, so they didn't stop me, but I picked out rainbow sharks for that little 5-gallon tank. And along with the other generic fish like plecos and neon tetras and all that stuff. And as expected, fish died all the time. But yeah, none of us really knew any better. Obviously, my dad knew enough that I couldn't get an Oscar or goldfish, stuff like that, but like regular community fish that were still on the smaller side, but still not suited for a 5-gallon tank. Short time after that, we upgraded to a 10-gallon tank. And the same pattern, rainbow sharks. Like, I was just a rainbow shark addict. Like, I've always been a rainbow shark addict, but back then I was really like, sharks, sharks, sharks. And we even put bala sharks in there. And then, like, I don't know exactly how long I had that 5-gallon and that 10-gallon for, but then eventually, when I was 7 or 8 years old, my dad got me the 40-gallon. This is like 2006 or something like that. But yeah, my dad got me the 40-gallon tank. That same 40-gallon tank that you guys saw in my very first YouTube fish videos with the clown vomit gravel and the colored orange, pink, red, and blue plants. And back then, I thought this was a huge tank. And unfortunately, shortly after we got that 40-gallon tank, that's when my 5-year involuntary break from the hobby started. And that was because my parents, who were already divorced like long before this happened, they got in a little petty argument over the phone, and my mom decided to pull that whole, you know what, I'm not letting you see the kids bullshit. So at the age of 8, I was no longer able to come over to my dad's house or see my dad or my grandparents anymore. And this continued on for 5 years. And those 5 years, they were a living hell. At my mom's house, there were no fish tanks. My mom hated fish tanks for reasons that I will talk about in a whole nother video. But my mom had experiences with fish tanks that she did not like back when my parents were still married. So yeah, no fish tanks at my mom's house. There were no trips to SeaWorld. SeaWorld was my other favorite thing at the time. And my mom's not poor by any means. She just did not want those things in her life. So she even took it to the point where she started banning the whole fish, whales, dolphins, all that stuff that had to do with the ocean and aquatic life from her household. Because I am on the autism Joe Biden stutter. I am on the autism spectrum, Asperger's. So fish, whales, dolphins, ocean life, those are my special interest that I'm obsessed with. I've been obsessed with these things my entire life. My mom saw this as an unhealthy obsession, and she tried to squash it by banning me from ever having anything to do with fish, whales, dolphins, anything related to the ocean or animals that lived in the water. So if I got caught looking at pictures or videos of fish, whales, dolphins, SeaWorld on the computer, I was automatically kicked off the computer and grounded. And she even went as far as to tell all my teachers not to let me have anything to do with anything aquatic. So it is a common school assignment or activity where teacher has you write an essay or paper about what you like, your hobbies, things that you like, basically essays and all that stuff. And you're supposed to write about a free topic. But by my mom's orders, she told those teachers, do not let him write about whales, dolphins, any ocean life, or any of that stuff. No whales, no fish, no dolphins, nothing aquatic. And those teachers listened to her, so I was not allowed to write about those things. Now, eventually, by 4th grade, I started retaliating. I pretty much put my foot down. Every time I got an assignment about a free topic, you could write about whatever you want. If I was told no fish, no whales, no dolphins, none of that stuff, I would just pretty much say, okay, then I'm not doing the assignment. And they would try to pull the whole, well, you're going to be grounded, or you're going to get an F, a 0, I'm going to give you a detention, I'm going to send you to the principal's office. I would be like, I don't care. I'm not doing the assignment, regardless of consequences, if I can't write about the things I like. And I kept it going. I was very stubborn about it. I flat out refused to do the assignment, no matter what they did, if I couldn't write about what I wanted to write about, especially considering it's a free topic essay. And this went on for a couple years, and my mom eventually did finally give up. Now on to the part where I started being able to see my dad again. Now, the judge in the court who originally ruled against my dad and allowed my mom to not let me see my dad anymore, that judge ended up dying. But the new judge, because my dad saw this as an opportunity to take my mom to court again, the new judge pretty much told my mom, okay, just because you're mad at your ex-husband does not give you the right to cheat your children out of a father. So yeah, finally at the age of 13, March 18th, 2012, I was finally able to start seeing my dad again and my grandparents, and I was able to start coming over here again. And my old 40-gallon tank was still up and running. My grandparents' little 15-gallon tank was gone because they pretty much gave up and retired from the hobby. So they put their 3 last remaining fish into my 40-gallon tank. It was 2 black skirt tetras and a little cory cat. That's why you see those 3 fish in my much older videos from back in the day. But yeah, Shortly after then, that's when I started posting fish tank videos to YouTube. So the first day I came back to my dad's house after 5 long years, one of the first things I asked about was, could we go to the fish store and pick out some fish? Because all of my fish that I had before then, they had already died. Like during that 5 years, I wasn't able to come over here. I never got to see my fish again. And I love those fish. Thanks, Mom. You're going to a nursing home when you get old. But yeah, one of the first things I asked was, could we go to the fish store and pick out some fish? And we went to a fish store down the street, and I picked out that red-tailed shark, that Big Daddy, the red-tailed shark that you guys saw in my videos for many years. He lived for almost 9 years. He died in 2020, but that was the first fish I got when I got back into the hobby. And I love that red-tailed shark. But still, this is the start of when I finally started learning how to properly take care of a fish, because I brought my hobby onto YouTube and Facebook. And to this day, when I look back at my old videos, like my very first YouTube videos of my old 40-gallon tank with that clown vomit gravel and all the colored plants, it makes me cringe. Back then, I had no idea what I was doing. But I started learning thanks to YouTube and Facebook, because I was also posting pictures and videos in Facebook fish groups. So 9 months after being able to start seeing my dad again and get back into the hobby, my dad brought up the idea of getting an even bigger tank, and I already thought this 40-gallon was big. So at first, we started looking all over the internet at 80-gallon tanks, 90-gallon tanks, and that's what I thought I was going to get. But on Christmas Day 2012, my dad surprised me with a 125-gallon tall. It was an odd shape for a 125. It was 5 feet long and like 26 or 27 inches tall. But yeah, that was to me at the time, that was a gigantic tank, and I thought I could do anything with it. And yeah, I had that tank for good 5.5 years. And that tank went through many phases, many changes. And I will say that when I had that 125, that was like when my fish keeping hobby peaked. Like, I still look back at those days as like the good old days. Like when my fish keeping hobby was in its prime. But after a while, I started getting tired of like all the scratches on the glass and all the algae growing in those scratches. And also the fact that the wooden canopy on top was like starting to rot for some reason. That tank was disgusting, and it was like already 20 years old when we first got it. So yeah, the tank was nasty, and I decided I needed a new tank. This time I wanted to go for a standard 6-foot 125, and then I saw that 135 at a local fish store for a good deal. 125, 135. The 135 is like only like 1 inch taller, and I got that because it was cheaper than all the 125s I saw. And I wanted a brand new tank, so I got that. Scratch-free, and I managed to keep it relatively scratch-free for almost 6 years. I thought that tank was going to be the last one I was going to have at this house. Like, I thought there was no way I could go bigger or any of that. But then, like, when I first set up that 135, it wasn't long before, like, my interest in the hobby kind of faded out for a while. I think I really lost interest in the hobby after Big Daddy, the red-tailed shark, died. So, like, I kind of let the tank go. And I was already lazy with it when I first set it up. Like, it was all plastic everything. Like, I was just very lazy with it. Maybe that's also a reason why I lost interest in the hobby so quickly. So from the end of 2020 up until January of 2023, I didn't really care much about this hobby. I wasn't really buying any new fish or anything. Like, I let everything age out and die off until I was down to like 7 fish. But then one day in January of 2023, that spark in my interest of the hobby finally got reignited. And that's when I finally started restocking the 135. Had a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning with a bad batch of roseline sharks, but I'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, I started restocking the 135. I got rid of, like, times during 2023, I got rid of my old pleco and my 3 bala sharks because, like, I just didn't like keeping like fish that were almost a foot long, even in a 6-foot tank. I wanted to make room for like a big, nice community tank. So I got rid of those big ass fish and just replaced them with these smaller community fish that you see here. And yeah, like it like feels like almost as if like 2023 brought back the prime of my fish keeping hobby. Like, today I think my fish keeping hobby now is even better than my 2016 2017 era for my fish keeping hobby. Like, I'm back into it full force, like more than I ever have been. And that's what pretty much made me realize, like, holy crap, I need to like really go into this. Like, fish keeping now is like better than it ever was, in my opinion. So flash forward to 2024, I noticed that the stand on my 135 was starting to show early signs of failure. And I was like, oh crap, okay, well, I'm not just going to take the whole tank off and like repair the stand. I'm just going to get a whole new setup. And I was thinking like, okay, I'll go a little bit bigger. So I was planning to get a 180 gallon, which is still a 6-foot tank. It's just wider than a 135. And my dad was like, wait a minute, you're upgrading to a slightly bigger tank, but even though it's a little bit wider front to back, it's still a 6-foot tank. You're going from a 6-foot tank to a 6-foot tank. That is stupid and a waste of money. You should get a tank that's longer. And I questioned if the floor would even be able to support that. And my dad pretty much told me, like, dude, there's big ass metal beams with metal supports running under these floors, and they can hold up to 10,000 pounds. And I was like, oh, okay. That's how I ended up getting this 8-foot, 240 gallon tank. And this size tank has been my dream tank for so many years. I just never really jumped on it because I didn't think the floor would support it. Turns out the floor can support it. But yeah, I held off on getting my dream tank for so long because I believed that it would not work in here, but it does. Now, it was a pain in the ass to get it in here, but it was worth it. Now I don't ever want to move out because that would involve having to move this thing out of the house, and getting it in here was a pain in the ass enough. But yeah, it took me a long time to start like going full force into the hobby. Obviously, I'm still a basic fish keeper, but after 20 years, just in the past year, I finally set up a fully planted aquarium. Not a single fake plant in sight. Took me forever to get into planted tanks, but here I am now. But I'm loving it so far. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at now with the hobby. I do eventually want to be able to have a fish room. Even if I was allowed to have multiple tanks in this house, there's really no space for it. Like, amount of space wise, yeah, I could fit a few more tanks in here, but this is a mobile home, so I can't just put a tank anywhere. They have to go directly above these metal supports, and this 240 is taking up all that space. And then there's couches and beds taking up the other spots. But anyway, when I am eventually able to have a fish room, I don't plan to go crazy with it with like a dozen little tanks or whatever. I plan to just have like 3 or 4 large tanks, like 100 to 200 to 300 gallons. not dozens of 20 gallons. But yeah, that was pretty much the story of how I get into this hobby, and the story is still being written. We shall see what the future brings, but I am really loving where I'm at in this hobby now. This is like the new prime of my fish keeping hobby, and I can't wait for it to get even better. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.